Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I'm going to show you a super cool puzzle where you have to figure out who wins this position or if it will be a draw. So take a moment to just examine this position. White's pawns are going up the board and it's white to move, and black's pawns of course are going down the board. So just take a second and look at the pieces. I have a bishop and two knights and these very deep pawns here looking to push forward against two rooks and four pawns. Pretty interesting imbalance we have going on here. So like I said, it's white to move, and your job is to see if you can find the best sequence for white, whether that's winning, drawing, or just putting up the best defense against black. Okay, while you're thinking about that, let me quickly encourage you to subscribe if you have not yet already. Half of the income that I earn in this channel goes directly to charity, so it helps out so much if you subscribe. Okay, let's get started now. So this is the big question. Who is winning this position? Well, let's just make a note of what is actually being threatened here. It's white's move. If they make a nothing move, let's just say rook a8, right? The point is to make a nothing move. The threat here is knight takes f2 check, and not only is that check, that's a fork, and this pawn is very dangerous, right? So you don't want to worry about a nothing move. Instead, it actually helps to think, what would my opponent do if it were their move? And that can help inform you on what you should do. Okay, so maybe you think to yourself, this knight will capture here, so I'll just defend this. I'll play rook to f8, defending this square. In that case, it's a good idea, but it doesn't work, because even if I take this with check, if you capture here, that doesn't really help your cause much, because I can take back, and now what? I'm going to queen one of these two. Okay, so it's a good idea, but not quite. And maybe you're thinking, what about just pushing the pawn and avoiding this capture altogether? Maybe that crossed your mind. If it did, I like the way you're thinking, but there's a catch. After f3, this knight on h4 can capture this pawn, and you can't capture back because your rook would be unprotected. Even though it would be a check, the king would just sidestep and take that. And if you don't take it, then what's the point, really? Because you're going to have to move your king or your rook, and then they're just going to get here anyway. Okay, so what is the move here? What is the winning idea, drawing idea, or best defense? Okay, the one move in this position that creates the best chances, I'll say it that way, rook takes h4. Now, why is that? Well, you need to avoid this threat of knight takes f2. So what you're doing is you're creating a check. Okay, either the king takes or the bishop takes. Let's look at first what happens if the king takes. Okay, well, you have a rook here. This looks like a nice check. Well, that's the move. Rook, check. What happens here? If the bishop comes up, you can either take it or you can play something like king f5, which is really clever. Talk about that in a second. But I should say that if the king goes here, you have checkmate in one, right? So they have to be careful if they're playing the black pieces. So let's return to this line here. If the bishop interposes, how many people do you think would just take this bishop and not even think twice? I would be one of those people. But if this happens, black just plays king g5, and I'm still very scared of this pawn capturing and promoting. And this square is covered. So I really have no good defense. Something like this is just a little too slow. Because look at this. I get here in time, and you might say, hey, you're in time. Yeah, technically I am in time, but look at this move. Knight g3. Both of these are going to go. You're not going to be able to guard both of them. I only have one rook. So you actually don't have to take this bishop in this line if you're white. The best move in this position is king f5. And this is kind of the crux of the puzzle. And if you've figured it out so far, great job. The idea here is you're bringing your king forward. You're threatening a pretty good move right here. Well, let's just say, for example, they take here. What do? Do you see the move? Hopefully you do. Rook takes h6. They only have one square. And now, this will just be a lot of checks. The king can't go here. The pawn is guarding. The king only has one square. This would be a draw, right? repetition, perpetual check, however you want to think about it. Technically, it's a repetition, right? It's a repetition by checks. Okay, let's go back. So the point of this bishop move is not to give up your bishop, it's to pretty much give yourself a square to get out if they take. Well, that's not the way it works in this particular position. Like I mentioned, king f5 is the best move. And let's just say you go for the obvious move like I just mentioned. You take this, well, it'll be a draw. So what else can you do? Maybe you make this move, right? Defend this bishop. In this position right here, try to see if you can find the best move. Just think about it for a second. It's kind of incredible. Well, if you take here, is that going to do it? No, that's not going to do it. You know why? That's mate. Ouch. Look at that. That hurts. So instead, you play the move f4. Now, what are you doing with f4 exactly? f4, you're blocking your king in, and you're creating a very interesting little net for yourself. What do I mean by that? Well, as black, you only have two legal moves. You can play king h4 or knight f2. If you play king h4, you lose. You get mated. You don't want to do that. So you clearly have to play knight f2. If you do that, what is that creating? That's creating these squares are no longer accessible to the white king. So what does that mean? I can play the crazy rook takes h6, and this is a draw by stalemate. Look at this. Isn't this nuts? This knight holding these squares, king holding that one. It looks like the question mark that I started with. Pretty amazing. Okay, let's go back to the first line though, because you didn't have to take with the king. So we have to examine this the other way around. What if they take with the bishop? If bishop takes, now there's still this threat. So you lock up the position, play f3. And the king has two choices, g5, h5. They both result in pretty much the same thing, but let's show the point. If they play h5, king h5, what do? You do the exact same thing you do in the other line. You play king f5. Why? Well, you're threatening checkmate in one, so they have to do something about that. And really, they can do one of two things. They can either put the bishop here to block, or like this, or they can move the king up. Let's just look really quickly at both. If they bring the king up, you can play check. They only have one move, king g7. And now, surprisingly, after rook takes h4, you're kind of in time to defend everything. Knight f2 is not going to hurt me now because I'm defending this square and I'm not so worried. I play f4. I have some pawns here. You want to promote? That's fine. I take here. You take here. And I think I'm okay just getting this pawn. This will be a draw. No problem at all. Pretty amazing line, right? Hopefully you're seeing the complexity here. That's if they play king h6. Well, you're threatening mate, like I mentioned. So what if they play bishop g5? Well, here is super cool idea. You can play rook h8 check. They're going to have to block. And now, look at this move. Just look at this. This is amazing. f4. Just calmly blocking your own king in. What you're doing is just like the other puzzle, just like the other line. You are self-stalemating yourself. That's redundant. You are stalemating yourself. Knight f2 with the intention of pushing this. Blocking my own squares in. This is stalemate. Isn't that absolutely amazing? So that's pretty much it. The objective result of this puzzle from this position is a draw. And the best way to force it is rook takes h4. And no matter what they do, it's going to be a draw. Personally, I like the line where they take with the bishop. You play f3. They do this kind of thing. And this move is so cool. King f4. And just this whole idea, putting the bishop here, blocking, and then playing this, blocking them in. I just love this. It's such a cool idea. But this was a Discord puzzle. So shout out to William Chess Dude on Discord for providing this puzzle to me. I really appreciate it. It's a really nice puzzle. And that's it for now. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, all that great stuff. But yeah, thank you so much. Bye.